The Tricks and Treats of Halloween by Angela Murphy, illustrated by Rich Wake. Chapter 1. How did it begin? If you think really hard, you can probably come up with some facts you already know about Halloween. For example, you know that Halloween falls on October 31st every year in the United States, right? And you almost definitely know that most kids like to go trick-or-treating and get loaded up with candy on Halloween, don't you? So, you already know a thing or two about Halloween. But, do you know how it began? Or why people dress up in costumes to go trick-or-treating? Or how carving pumpkins became a part of the holiday? By the time you finish reading this book, you will know the answers to those questions, and many more. You will be a history of fun stuff expert on Halloween. Many people believe that Halloween has its origins in Europe, in an ancient Celtic festival of Samhain. This festival, which took place every year on November 1st, celebrated the end of summer and the beginning of winter. The Celts would wear costumes and have ceremonies to protect their crops from spirits. They believed that the spirits might come damage their crops and that the costumes would scare the spirits away. The costumes and the spooky spirits sound a little bit familiar to modern Halloween, don't they? Another ancient people, the Romans, had long day festivals to celebrate the harvest and to honor those who had died. One of these was a day for Pomona, the goddess of fruit and orchards. They also had a day to honor the dead called Friella. The Romans are famous for their vast empire and its largest. It went so far north as England and as far south as Egypt. It also stretched west to Spain and east to today's Middle East. By 43 AD, the Romans had conquered the territories of the Celts in England. And over the next few centuries, some of the customs from their Pomona and Friella festivals merged with those of Samhain. Halloween has also been closely linked to a Christian holiday called All Saints' Day, or All Hallows' Day, which comes much later in history than Samhain and continues to be celebrated today. Like Samhain, All Saints' Day occurs on November 1st. The night before is called All Hallows' Eve, which eventually became known as Halloween. Throughout the centuries, people have celebrated All Saints' Day in many ways, including dressing up like devils, angels, and saints, and marching in parades to honor Christian saints. The costumes and parades sound a little similar to modern Halloween too, right? As time went on, traditions changed. Halloween lost some of its religious meaning and instead became a holiday that was meant to bring people together for fun and celebration. In the United States, it is estimated that Americans spend $8 billion on Halloween every year. Halloween is the second largest commercial holiday that is celebrated. Can you guess what is the most popular one is? Here's a hint. Think of a guy with a big white beard who dresses up in a red suit and lives in the North Pole. If you guessed Christmas, you are correct. And speaking of dressing up, one of the most fun things about Halloween is choosing your costume. Chapter 2. Finding the perfect costume. Back in the early days of Halloween, people assigned a lot of meaning to their Halloween costumes. Remember the costumes people wore on All Saints' Day. In modern times, the sky is the limit when it comes to Halloween costumes. Some people love to dress up in spooky costumes like ghosts or vampires, while other people love to dress up as sports players, movie stars, and famous historical figures. Some people even dress up as characters from a favorite book or television show. If you can think of it, you can probably dress up as it for Halloween. No one knows for sure what the most popular Halloween costume is throughout the ages, but there are some very popular options that have been around for a long time, like witches, black cats, skeletons, Frankenstein's monster, and ghosts. Have you ever dressed up in one of those classic costumes? Nowadays, Halloween costumes can be purchased or rented, or they can be made at home. Some fun homemade Halloween costumes we've heard about include a bag of jelly beans, a tree, and a giant meatball. What is the silliest homemade costume you can think of? Whatever costume you choose, one thing is for sure. Costumes are a fun part of one of Halloween's most beloved traditions, trick or treating. Chapter 3, Trick or Treat. Trick-or-treating seems to have grown out of a variety of traditions that have been observed through the centuries. Remember the festival of Samhain and the spirits of the Celts wanted to protect their crops from? Well, it turns out that the Celts would not only dress up in costume to keep the spirits away, thereby tricking them, but they would also put out treats for the spirits to keep them happy. Later, as All Saints' Day grew in popularity, another tradition took hold in England, making soul cakes. Soul cakes were biscuits that were handed out to the poor or to performers who traveled from town to town. As time went on, the tradition changed and children began to go around to different houses in search of cakes or little presents. Meanwhile, in Scotland and Ireland, another tradition was evolving. It was called goosing. Related to the word disguise, children would dress up and go from door to door performing tricks like singing, telling jokes or stories, or other displays of talent. For their efforts, the people who lived in the houses would give out treats like fruit, nuts, or coins. Speaking of traveling, as you know, Halloween eventually came to the United States, but it didn't happen overnight. With the exception of some southern states, Halloween wasn't widely celebrated in the United States until the middle of the 1800s. However, when it was first celebrated, it was more like a harvest festival than today's holiday. By the second half of the 1800s, more immigrants began arriving, many of them from Ireland. Ireland was going through a time of hardship called the Great Potato Famine, and immigrants came to the United States in search of a better life. They brought many of their Halloween customs with them. The Halloween began to grow more and more popular and resembled what we know and love about Halloween today. By the early 1900s, Halloween had taken a firm hold in the United States. Entire towns celebrated with parades and parties. But it wasn't all fun and games. There was a dark side to Halloween. Some people were going too far in damaging property. In order to put a stop to this, townspeople shifted the focus of the holiday to children. And trick-or-treating, as we know it, was born. By the 1950s, trick-or-treating had become the focus of Halloween. And what is the best part of trick-or-treating? Candy, of course. Today, giving out candy is as much a part of Halloween as giving out Valentines on Valentine's Day. Remember the billion spent on Halloween? Well, 1/4 of that, or $2 billion, is spent just on candy alone. What kind of candy is your favorite? What about candy corn? Love it or hate it? Americans sure do eat it a lot. 35 million pounds of candy corn are eaten each year. That's 9 billion pieces. There's even a National Candy Corn Day on October 30th, the day before Halloween. Candy corn was invented in 1880 by a man in Philadelphia named George Reiniger. But it wasn't called candy corn back then. It was known as chicken feed. Doesn't sound quite as appealing, does it? Another Halloween treat is the age-old practice of bobbing for apples. Now merely a fun party game where you have to grab an apple with your teeth without using your hands. It was once part of a tradition of fortune-telling that would be done around Halloween. It was believed that the first person who successfully got an apple during a round of the game would be the first person to be married. That's a lot of pressure on one little apple. Chapter 4, Spooky Symbols. What would Halloween be without decorations to help set the spooky mood? For one thing, it wouldn't be as colorful. October is ruled by orange and black. Why orange? For the harvest and pumpkins, of course. During the month of October, you probably see lots of pumpkins and pumpkin-themed Halloween decorations all around. But did you know that pumpkins are native to the Americas and that, like tomatoes, they are fruits, not vegetables? The heaviest pumpkin on record weighed more than 2,000 pounds. To put that in perspective, imagine the size of an average crocodile. Now imagine 2 crocodiles. That's about how much that pumpkin weighed. But Halloween isn't just about pumpkins. It's also about carving them. The first jack-o'-lanterns made in England and Ireland centuries ago were created by carving turnips, potatoes, and even beets. It wasn't until Halloween started being celebrated in the United States and people discovered that pumpkins were bigger and easier to carve, that they became the go-to fruit for jack-o'-lanterns. But how did carving fruits and vegetables become a tradition in the first place? It comes from an old Irish legend about a trickster named Stingy Jack. As punishment for his pranks, Jack was forced to wander from place to place with only a lantern made from a hollowed-out turnip as his guide. Originally, Stingy Jack was also known as Jack of the Lantern, but over the decades that was shortened to Jack-o'-lantern. The other color associated with Halloween is black. Black symbolizes the night sky and black cats. But how did these furry felines end up becoming a staple of Halloween decorations? A long time ago, people believed black cats were associated with dark magic. And through the years, they were added to the assortment of Halloween symbols. These days, we know that black cats are just like any other cat, sweet and adorable. And we also know something else about them. Dressing up like one makes for a great and easy Halloween costume. History of Fun Stuff expert on Halloween. Congratulations! You've come to the end of this book. You are now an official History of Fun Stuff expert on Halloween. Go ahead and impress your friends and family with all the cool things you know about the spookiest night of the year. And when it's time to go trick-or-treating, remember everything you've learned about the many traditions that led up to Halloween, and enjoy. Hey kids, Now that you're an expert on the history of Halloween, turn the page and learn even more about it, and some geography, science, and trivia along the way.